Look at these models, dude.
I know.
You know what they look like? Have you seen Beetlejuice? Hey guys, I'm Mono, and today I'm taking a look back at Enlisted. I first reviewed this game when it came out almost 2 years ago, and back then I complained about the bot behavior, the clunky gameplay, and the crazy grind needed to unlock new squads, vehicles, and upgrades. Has any of this changed? Yeah, no. Well, kind of. So join me as I take a fresh look at Enlisted and see if it's worth your time or not. Let's start with the positives and talk about the way this game looks, because that is definitely one of its strong points. The reason I wanted to revisit this was actually because my buddy Razbora was playing it on stream, and I was like, wow, that looks much better than I remembered. So I'm really amazed by the level of detail put into every single level here, especially the newer and more urban ones. The level of geometry on display here, particularly inside buildings, is quite mind-blowing. There's no other game that I can think of that comes even close to this amount of fully fleshed out, completely different buildings that you find in Enlisted. There is a very intricate level of detail here, with very few and infrequent uses of asset repetition, at least as far as the building geometry goes. Each wall seems to have been hand sculpted instead of trying to cleverly hide the same reused assets by flipping them around on different houses. It's actually quite remarkable, and if you enjoy moving around buildings, finding cool ways to flank the enemy, or find hidden spots to shoot from, I think you will find this quite enjoyable. There are always multiple different areas and ways of reaching the higher floors of basically any building, delivering a real sense of atmosphere and realism to the game. The bombed out sections, the collapsed walls, the crumbled reinforced concrete of the upper floors, providing a makeshift ramp to propel yourself to the upper levels. It's really well done, and I've enjoyed greatly playing a sniper in the more urban maps, making my way into remote locations that you would consider completely inaccessible in other games, but are fair game here in Enlisted. Tying this up is an actually pretty decent movement system where you can actually grab ledges over your head to climb up. It's actually very impressive, and I can't think of a game that has that same ledge grabbing mechanic except for Battlefield 5, but in that game it's not really used very much at all. So it's really good. There is some amount of destructibility too to these maps, though it does seem to be relegated mostly to objects rather than buildings. I have seen a few walls being blown up, but yeah, it's mostly stuff like trees and debris that you can knock around and blow up. So it can be visually quite an impressive and detailed title, but then you run into stuff like this. The player models are positively dreadful. It's like they had someone explain human anatomy to an alien that's never seen a human being before, and they got the proportions slightly wrong. The shoulders and chest are completely at odds with the rest of the body, the heads are too small, the faces sometimes look like they are these partially developed clones from some sci-fi breeding facility, like the eyes didn't get enough time in the oven or something, making them look all gooey and lifeless. I don't know if this is a byproduct of the insane customization options available for your soldiers, but I wouldn't be surprised if that were the case. I think this is a trend that neatly describes everything about this game. There are a lot of good ideas and decent gameplay that's getting completely sabotaged or made worse by a myriad of seemingly unnecessary issues, all of which seem to be the byproduct of trying to cram in as much monetization and free-to-play loyalty mechanics as humanly possible. But before diving into that specifically, let's talk about the gameplay and the gunplay, because everything will make much more sense once we go over this. In Enlisted, you are always in control of a squad, not of a single soldier. So what that means is you control one soldier out of a squad of bots that follow you around, being able to switch to any one of them at any given time. If you happen to die, then you instantly switch to another squad member bot thing, so you don't have to respawn again, which, you know, seems like a good idea, but then cue in problem number one. Bots are usually dead by the time you actually need them. And I know, as soon as I mention this, someone is getting ready to type in the comments that you can order the bots around and have them stay back and spread out and stuff like that. And yes, those commands do exist, but they are limited and they help mitigate the problem, but they do not eliminate it in any way, shape, or form. Also, I'm a fairly competitive player, a tryhard if you will. This is ultimately a mechanic that requires you to be distracted from the actual enemy that you're fighting, in order for it to actually work the way that it should, because you have to pay attention to what the bots are doing instead of actually paying attention to the enemies. So you either do that or you just accept the fact that more often than not, your bots will die several minutes before you do. And even if they don't, you sometimes get this loop of you die, you get reincarnated into a bot that also gets shot because the enemy just sees you and your bots, so he's just gonna kill everyone. So it's this really, really awful mechanic, actually. So it's something that sounds like a cool idea, but has, in my opinion, a profoundly negative effect on the way that the game is played. The biggest problem is that Enlisted doesn't play like a multiplayer shooter. It doesn't feel like any of the other team-based PvP shooters that I've ever played. In games like Battlefield, like Call of Duty, Hell of Deuce, and multiple others, you play against human players. Human players behave a certain way. How they react to being shot, how they move across the level, all of that has a certain feel to it that is shared across any PvP multiplayer shooter, except for Enlisted. Enlisted feels like you're in a single-player bot match. I'll try and put up some footage now of something that is way too common in this game, and that is seeing bots that will suddenly stand still and take position while not really aiming at anything. You know how when someone is playing a VR game and you know that in their world they are aiming at some enemy or something, but all you see from the outside is like a guy staring very intently at a wall? That is exactly what most of the bot behavior is like in Enlisted. I finished pretty high up on the leaderboard in most of the matches I played, especially in terms of kills, and I would say that 80%, if not more, of those kills were bots and not human players. So to call this a multiplayer shooter is actually a bit of a misnomer. I mean, yes, there are other players that you shoot at, but they are completely outnumbered at all times by the army of bots. And this is actually really simple to understand. Infantry squads range between 3 to 6 soldiers, of which only one is a human player, so bots represent at the very least 2/3 of the battlefield. Well, before they all start dying, obviously, right? What's even worse is how you see these lines of bots following the one human player at the front, like some sort of cannon fodder conveyor belt. At one point I thought, wow, even if you miss a shot, chances are you kill one of the 4 dudes running behind just by accident. But that's actually not true, because another issue that the game has is hit registration. There's been multiple instances where I'm shooting at the 3rd or 4th spawn wave of this mass of soldiers running down the exact same spot where I just killed 10 other dudes just a few seconds before, and just suddenly none of the shots seem to land. Why? I honestly don't know. I tend to play with relatively high ping because I live in South America and mostly play in US servers, so I'm pretty good at determining if I need to compensate for ping or not, or, you know, if the ping is being the issue or whatever. But in the case of Enlisted, I really can't tell what's going on. It's really bizarre and seems to be completely random. And I know there's going to be a percentage of people thinking, like, oh, you know, get good, whatever. I play shooters. That is what I do, and that is what I've been doing for more than 30 years. I played on LAN, on dial-up internet, over a phone call with Duke Nukem 3D, and stuff like that. I don't think I've ever seen a game with these random hit registration issues that Enlisted has. All this aside, it does feel like they have addressed some of the issues I had with the gunplay when I first played this. Guns don't seem to swim as much as before on your screen when you're reloading them or waving them around. I know they made some changes to some of the soldier animations, and overall it feels much better than it did before. It's still not as good as top tier games from the same genre, but it's not bad either. The sound of gunshots though aren't very good. They sound more like you're whacking something with a stick, and they feel off, especially compared to the rest of the soundscape, which is actually pretty impressive. The sound of airplanes diving in, of bombs going off at the distance, and stuff exploding all around you, all sounds properly loud with good directional audio. Footsteps are also amiss, though I've seen worse. So, a little pause here. There's one thing that I would say right now to anyone thinking about spending any time with this game, which definitely has some redeeming qualities to it, is that it really doesn't play like a multiplayer shooter. If you approach this as a more relaxed experience as you would a bot match against Battlefield 9042 levels of bad AI controlled bots, then you can probably get some decent enjoyment out of this. if you are looking for a competitive shooter to test yourself against other human players, Enlisted isn't it. Alright, now let's get into the free-to-play mechanics because, oh boy. Let me put it this way. If free-to-play were a speedrun, Enlisted would be the tool-assisted Mario 64 world record. In the free-to-play Olympics, Enlisted would be the multiple gold medalist, decathlon-running, steroid-infused fiend of a man. The free-to-play mechanics in this game are like MC Escher's staircases, endlessly looping onto themselves in a never-ending spiral of weekly challenges, currencies, and unlocks. It's like the fractal world of free-to-play busywork and insanity. And you may think I'm exaggerating. I am definitely not. Here's how it goes. Every soldier in every squad has its own equipment, perks, and experience. Perks can sometimes be worthless, like getting plus 50% vaulting speed for a tank crew member and stuff like that. And of course, if you get those bad perks, you can re-roll them using premium currency. Every weapon can also be upgraded for every squad member, but that requires weapon tokens that are a sort of currency that you get for completing challenges or by just playing some rounds. Every squad also has this 3-tiered upgrade tree where you can even upgrade the max level attainable for your soldiers. So you can, and again, I am not kidding, you can upgrade your ability to upgrade in order to upgrade. And we are just getting started, by the way. There are daily login bonuses, weekly tasks, achievements, boosters, a battle pass, and a premium account. And here's the kicker. The maps that you play are divided into campaigns. So, for example, there's multiple different maps for the Battle of Berlin campaign. Each of these campaigns has its own progression to unlock squads, which is separate for each team. But the Germans of the Battle of Berlin are not the same Germans as the ones from the Battle of Stalingrad. They are separate progression trees. There are currently 6 different campaigns, which means there are 12 different teams, each with about 40 levels of progression to unlock new squads, weapons, and vehicles. And remember, each squad has its own 3-pronged progression tree, each soldier has his own perk and equipments, each weapon has its own upgrades, and things as simple as being able to equip a sidearm have to be unlocked somewhere. Roughly half of the 40 campaign levels that most of the campaigns seem to have are new squads to unlock. That means there's more than 700 different skill trees that you can engage with. And that's just counting the squad level general purpose stuff, not the individual weapons or soldiers. The only free-to-play mechanic that is absent, as far as I've been able to tell, are timed gate progress, where you unlock something and then you have to wait a certain amount of time to use it, or energy mechanics. They are not there now. I wouldn't be surprised if they find a way to cram those in the future. If this all sounds extremely convoluted, it's because it really is. It's like the Joker or the Riddler devised the most tortuous, most gimmicky, most unnecessarily restrictive, intricate, and drawn-out progression system ever to drive the citizens of Gotham insane. If you really want to start playing this regularly, the good news is you will always have some menu to click through to get a reward or a new perk, or add a new perk to soldier number 3 of squad number 15 of team number 1 of campaign number 3. And the bad news is, well, it's the same as the good news, I guess. And ultimately, a question that I think is really important for this type of free-to-play game is this pay to win? Yes. Oh, yes it is. While you can technically unlock stuff by just playing the game, someone can easily just dump a load of money to get the best tank available in the campaign that you're playing in and upgrade it and kit it out with the 10% plus turret turning speed and the plus 30% reload speed and so on. And unless they are absolutely brain dead, there is not a chance in hell that you are winning a tank battle against them. And here's the final nail in the coffin for me. Enlisted isn't an arcade style shooter. It's shooting, pun intended, for some realism. So it's not like Battlefield where a Greyhound can damage and eventually kill a Tiger. Depending on what tank you're fielding, there's a very real chance you literally won't even be able to damage the enemy tank at all. And it's a real shame, to be honest, because if the bots weren't there, or they were at least much better than they are, if the progression tree was something logical and digestible, and the game decided whether it wants to go full realism or full arcade in a way that doesn't handicap the players that just didn't grind or pay as much as the next guy, it would be a fantastic game. The shooting and animations would still be a bit janky, but everything else would more than make up for it. Just the sheer amount of content is really good. So, should you play this? Well, if you're looking for that, I'm just gonna shoot a bunch of bots and have some fun doing that, and eventually I might get to be this like super OP squads and shoot the bots better, then yes, I'm sure it's a lot of fun to go full-on God mode with a fully upgraded squad and lay waste to absolutely everything. But you have to be willing to either invest literally thousands of hours or shell out a couple of $100, if not more, to just get there a little faster. And the premium currency is not cheap, so I'm literally talking a couple of $100 at the very least. If you're looking for a competitive shooter where most of the fun comes from facing other human players and trying to just play better than them, then 100% no. That's not what this game is. Even if they aren't free, I would recommend basically any of the Battlefield games for cheap that you can get on some sale, like Battlefield 5, 4, 3, whatever. If you want that World War II setting, then I guess go for Battlefield 5. Maybe try World of Tanks if you're into the tank combat. If it absolutely has to be free, then World War III on PC is actually a much better free alternative. Unfortunately, yes, it's not on console, so you're out of luck if you're on console. Speaking of, most of the players that I encountered, if not all of them, were on console, and it seems like the mouse and keyboard gives you a pretty significant advantage against them. Well, there you have it, guys. That's my updated take on Enlisted. In a way, it actually kind of reminds me of playing Solitaire on Windows 3.1. It's a pretty decent time waster, if nothing else, and if you don't really have anything else to play, and sometimes that's kind of all you need. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments section. I would love for some Enlisted players to explain what part of the game they find most appealing and why they choose to play Enlisted over other games. Not that I'm like bashing you or anything, I completely respect that, but you know, I'm just curious. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like, maybe click my name to check out the rest of the channel and think about subscribing. And as always, thank you for watching, and I hope I will catch you in the next one.